Hello everyone, Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. Today's video is a review for Batman The Long Halloween Part 1 and 2. This is a DC animated feature that came out in two parts last year at some point. I finally was able to watch the movies over the New Year's break, so I wanted to chat a little bit about the movie because I really like this. I like the original story this is adapted from. Um, I won't go into too many spoilers, but here's your spoiler warning just in case. Especially if you haven't read the book, I think going in fresh into this movie um, really kind of offsets everything and really raises your expectations if you have read it versus you haven't. So let's get into it. So Batman: The Long Halloween is directed by Chris Palmer, written by Tim Sheridan. So Tim Sheridan adapted the screenplay, but like I mentioned, this is based on the work by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale of The Long Halloween. So in part one, we have Batman investigating a murder spree that takes place on the holidays. And then in part two, we know that the killer, known as Holiday, continues to stalk Falcone, the Falcone crime family, while a new class of costume criminal rises in Gotham. Batman suspects that a former ally might be the serial killer. So both of these movies focus on Batman, Commissioner Gordon, and DA Harvey Dent trying to catch the criminal known as Holiday, who is going after Carmine Falcone, who you may have remember from the movies. This book was also a big influence in The Dark Knight. So if a lot of the elements feel similar, like there's a lot of, especially the relationship between Gordon and Harvey Dent and Batman, if any of that stuff feels similar, uh, know that, and you watch The Dark Knight, know that's what the reason. Even if you haven't read the comic, you'll still should be able to pick up on a few of those things. So as of the recording of this video, both parts have 100% on on the Rotten Tomato from the critics, and then from the audience they have 88% for part one, 81% for part two. I can see why the audience would be a little less receptive to the second part. It does get a little bit convoluted, but I think that's just part of solving the mystery. So let's talk about the cast, and then I'll go a little bit more in depth into the review and what I thought of both of these movies. Both movies are about 90 minutes long, so they should be about, it'll take about maybe 3 hours to watch the whole thing, which is why I watched it in two parts. Uh, so Jensen Ackles voices Batman and Bruce Wayne. Josh Duhamel voices Harvey Dent, and here's a spoiler, also Two-Face. Naya Rivera, who unfortunately passed away before the release of the second movie, voices Catwoman. Billy Burke voices Commissioner Gordon. Titus Welliver voices Carmine Falcone the Roman. Troy Baker reprises his role as the Joker, and Layla Bersins as Sophia Falcone, who we see in the second part. And then there's a lot more characters. I think the voice cast and somebody that I didn't mention, and somebody else who I didn't mention, Calendarman is voiced by David Desmolchin, who was also in the Dark Knight movie. Most recently, we've seen him in the Suicide Squad by James Gunn as Polka Dot Man. But I think he's excellent in his role of Calendarman. He's just creepy enough, and then the animation really worked. So speaking of animation, let's start there. This movie, Tim Sale has a very distinct art. Like just his art style is very distinct. So this movie did a really good job in adapting a lot of those characters, but also making them feel like part of the DC animated universe that they've set up. So they're really good adaptations. I think the changes that were made were super valid for all the characters, but you still get that little bit of the noir design that you have from Gotham. I think Gotham still feels like a very dark place, especially throughout all these holidays, which was really an interesting premise to set the movie around. 12 holidays throughout the year, from one Halloween to the other. Hence the name of the Long Halloween. Also, the introduction of the villain, Holiday. It's very subtle, and it just kind of keeps escalating, and it gets so bad that it forces Batman to work more closely with Harvey and Commissioner Gordon. And that trio, which like I mentioned is a reflection of what happened kind of in the Dark Knight, where those three characters also come together to to stave off a bigger threat. I think one of the big changes from the book, uh, at least in just my memory and from what I remember, because it's been a little while since I read the book, but I have read it recently in the past at least 5 years. The other villains, there's other villains in the movie, as you may see in the promotional material, and the scenes that maybe are intercutting here throughout the review. We have Joker, Mad Hatter, Scarecrow, who's really good. Solomon Grundy was a really important piece of the comic. Um, we also have Poison Ivy and the Penguin, who show up. Poison Ivy, I think she plays a way bigger role than in the comic, which was really interesting. And then we also have, Batman needs another ally, but somebody that kind of can work outside the law, and that's where Catwoman comes in. But the cool thing about Catwoman is that, as always, she has her own like distinct goals and things that she's trying to get done. So yeah, I really like that. I think Naya River did a fantastic job in the voice. Um, so yeah, I do hope to see more of these other voice actors go forward. It's really cool to see Jensen Ackles back in the DC universe. He voiced the Red Hood and Under the Red Hood, and I thought that was an incredible role. So it's really interesting to see him now play Batman. So overall, I really like the movie. I don't, like I said, I don't mind the changes that they made from the comic. I think everything worked. The movie is really well paced. The animation looks great. I think the fights, there's a few scenes of like chases and sequences like that. They're really well done. They really feel dynamic. And like I said, the whole environment of Gotham, it just feels dark and somber. Even in the more colorful holidays like St. Patrick's Day or Independence Day, as we go through the year. Um, I think I do feel like the Joker was a little bit just kind of inserted in here because we want to put him in the promotional materials. I don't know that and he wasn't a big part in the comic, so I feel like he also was not to be a big part of the movie. But I think, as always, like we want to have these posters with all the villains. So there's an end credit scene in the first movie that you really would need to make sure to watch at the end. So keep that in mind. And then there's also an end credit scene in the second movie as well. Okay, so overall, I think the movie, whatever changes were made by Sheridan and everybody else that worked in the movie, I think they really improved on multiple things. The mystery, the character designs, they really made them feel more contemporary and also kind of timeless. Although, like I mentioned, I think Tim Sale's art, I really enjoyed it, but I know some people like it's not really for everyone. I think it's very distinct. So you may have a few issues. Even when I first read the original book, it took me a few tries to kind of get past that barrier of entry. Once I saw a few panels that I was like, okay, this is what Tim Sale's trying to do with the art. I understood and finally was able to move forward. And the first time I read this book, I read the whole like all 12 issues in a row. Also, in as far as the second end credit scene, and then here's where we have like I'll give you another spoiler warning. So if you haven't seen the movie, go check that out. We see that Alfred opens the door on Halloween, and we see that the Flash and Green Arrow show up. Now, this is the first movie, other than a few other things that seems to be standalone, that seems to be back in the DC universe after the events of Apocalypse War, which kind of was the a big reset for the DC animated universe. So I don't know if this feel like when they show up, like do they already know they already must know Batman and work with him. So it's gonna be interesting to see what kind of stuff they're setting up. I really haven't heard any announcements for any more animated movies. The only other thing that was out was Injustice, but that really was completely unrelated to this movie. So it's interesting. Unless they're trying to set up a Green Arrow Flash movie, which I think they've teamed up in the comics in the past. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see why those two characters specifically show up at the end of the end credit scene. But overall, if you made it this far in the review, thanks for watching. I really like this movie. I'm fully on board with the critics and the audience on this one. It's just really good, really fun adaptation. DC animated movies for me sometimes are hit or miss. But in the like Injustice, I was not a big fan of it. You can go back and check out the review for that. But I think both of these, they really do a great job with the adaptation of the comic, and then also delivering an interesting story for those that haven't read the comic. So yeah, go check it out. I recommend it. You can watch both parts now on HBO Max. So it'll be nice to have a lot of these animated movies end up on HBO Max in the future. So thanks for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we go live. That is most Sundays, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. We have more comic reviews, movie reviews, TV recaps, trailer reactions, all that good stuff you love to see in the channel. And let me know down in the comments what you thought of the movie. If you have any other animated movies you'd like us to review or anything you're looking forward to. So yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Bye bye.